Experience the kinetic energy of a life in constant motion, where every choice creates a ripple that changes the world forever. We capture the heat of the moment through our unique 3D cinematic lens. Click subscribe now and be part of the energy that defines our world.
I've been wiring $3,000 into your account every single month for 4 years, Maya. I hope it helped you through nursing school. My aunt set down her fork. The entire table went quiet. I felt the air leave my lungs. I did the math before I even looked up. $3,000, 48 months. That was $144,000. I pressed my hands flat against my thighs under the table so no one could see them shaking. Then I turned slowly and looked at my mother. Her face had gone the color of old chalk. My father was staring at the centerpiece like it owed him money. Neither of them reached for their wine glasses. Neither of them said a word. I turned back to my aunt and said the sentence that burned my family to the ground. I never saw a single dollar of it. But before I tell you what my mother said when she finally found her voice, I need you to leave a comment right now. Tell me where you're listening from. I want to see how far this story reaches. Because what happened next at that dinner table, I need witnesses. My name is Maya. I am 28 years old. I am a registered nurse. I work 12-hour overnight shifts at a level 2 trauma center in Charlotte, North Carolina. And for the last 4 years, I have been sleeping on a pull-out couch in a one-bedroom apartment I share with 2 other people because I cannot afford to live alone. I have been eating overnight oats for breakfast 5 days a week because the math only works if I spend under $40 on groceries. I have been wearing compression socks with a hole in the left heel for 7 months because a new pair cost $19, and $19 in October meant I could not pay my student loan minimum and my electric bill in the same week. I made choices. That is what I told myself. Every time I chose the bill over the socks, the loan over the groceries, the shift over the sleep, I told myself that this was temporary. That this was what sacrifice looked like before it paid off. That I was building something real. What I did not know was that I was being robbed. The dinner was my grandmother's 75th birthday. My aunt had flown in from Seattle. She is my grandmother's younger sister, which makes her technically my great aunt. But she has always just been my aunt to me. She is a retired tax attorney. She is 71 years old. She has sharp gray eyes and the kind of posture that makes you sit up straighter without meaning to. She had been the one to set up the family trust after my great-uncle passed 8 years ago. She managed the distributions herself because, as she told my grandmother once, she didn't trust anyone who hadn't personally filed a Schedule K-1. She had started sending me money the month I began nursing school. She told my parents about it. She sent the wire confirmations to my father's email as a courtesy, so the family would know I had a safety net. She assumed I was simply the kind of person who didn't make a big show of gratitude. She assumed I was quiet and private about financial help. She had not assumed, not for 4 years, that I had never received a single confirmation, a single deposit, a single dollar. It was my grandmother who gave it away, without meaning to. She had asked me over the phone the week before the birthday dinner whether I had finally moved into my own place. I had laughed and said, not yet, maybe next year. My grandmother had gone quiet in a way that felt strange. She said she thought I would have moved by now with all the help I had been getting. I asked what help. She said she thought my aunt had been sending me money for school. I said I didn't know anything about that. There was a long pause. My grandmother said, and then changed the subject to the birthday dinner menu. I almost didn't go. I had a shift the night before and I would have been running on 4 hours of sleep and a gas station coffee. But something about that phone call sat wrong with me. My grandmother's voice when she said, the way it didn't sound like confusion. It sounded like the beginning of something being confirmed. I drove 3 hours to that dinner. I sat down at the table across from my parents. My younger brother Tyler was on his phone at the far end, barely acknowledging anyone. Tyler is 25. He does not have a job, technically. He has a brand. He posts fitness content and lifestyle videos, and he has just under 80,000 followers, which my parents reference the way other parents reference a medical degree. My aunt arrived last. She hugged my grandmother for a long time. She shook my father's hand, which I always found interesting because he's technically her nephew by marriage. She kissed my mother on the cheek. She sat down next to me and squeezed my hand and said it was good to see me looking healthy. I said thank you. The appetizers came out, and then, Over the salad course, in the warm light of my grandmother's dining room with the good china and the candles she only uses twice a year, my aunt said those words. I've been wiring $3,000 into your account every single month for 4 years, Maya. The table held its breath. When I said I never saw a single dollar of it, my aunt's face changed. Not dramatically. She didn't gasp. She didn't knock anything over. She simply set her fork down with great care, folded her hands on the table, and turned to look at my father the way I imagined she once looked at clients who had been caught lying on their returns. "Richard," she said. "Just his name. Nothing else." My father looked up. He had the expression of a man who had just realized that the bridge he'd been standing on had been made of paper the whole time. "Eleanor," he said, using her name like a shield. "There's clearly been some kind of miscommunication with the bank transfers. You know how these things get. I have wire confirmations, routing numbers, and 4 years of transaction records," my aunt said. Her voice was completely level. "I also have the account number I was wiring to, which I set up with you directly in this same house at that desk." She pointed toward my grandmother's study. "In the fall of 4 years ago. Would you like me to read it aloud?" My father said nothing. My mother reached across the table and put her hand over his. That gesture told me everything. It wasn't comfort. It was coordination. "There was a processing error," my mother said. Her voice was smooth, practiced. My mother has a talent for sounding reasonable in moments that aren't. She was a real estate agent for 12 years, and she has a way of reframing a problem so that you end up apologizing for having raised it. The funds were consolidated into a family account because Maya's original account had some flagging issues early on. We've been holding them in trust, essentially, until she was more financially stable. I looked at her. I let the silence breathe. "Financially stable," I repeated. "You know how you are with money, sweetheart," she said. And her voice was warm in the way that cold things can appear warm when there's enough ambient light. "You've always been impulsive. Remember when you quit that internship senior year? Or when you moved apartments twice in 6 months? We didn't want you to make a rash decision with a significant amount of money and end up worse off." "I quit that internship because the commute was 3 hours round trip and I was working full-time nights," I said. "And I moved apartments because the second landlord was illegally withholding heat." "See, there's always a reason," my mother said, as if I had just proved her point for her. I looked down at my hands. I was still pressing them flat against my thighs. I thought about the last 4 years. I thought about the specific texture of the last 4 years. I thought about the January when I had an ear infection so bad I could barely hear out of my left side, and I waited 2 weeks to go to the doctor because the copay was $200, and I needed to time it with my next paycheck. I thought about the night I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot at 3 a.m. after a 12-hour shift and cried for 20 minutes, not because of anything that happened at work, just because I was so tired of calculating, just because I was exhausted down to the calcium in my bones from the relentless arithmetic of not having enough. I thought about the Christmas 3 years ago when Tyler unwrapped a MacBook Pro and I got a candle. My mother had said that Tyler needed it for his content, that it was an investment in his future. She said it with such conviction that I had almost believed her. I had gone home that Christmas and told my roommate that my family was just practical, that gifts were not their love language. I had defended them. I reached into my bag. I did not make a scene of it. I did not announce what I was doing. I pulled out my phone, opened my camera, and tilted it at a slight angle against the water glass in front of me so the lens caught the table, my parents, my brother at the far end. North Carolina is a one-party consent state. I was a participant in this conversation. Everything said in that room from this point forward was mine to record. I pressed live. "So the account you consolidated the money into," I said, keeping my voice conversational. "Can you show me that account?" My mother blinked. "I don't have the statements on me, obviously." "What's the account number?" "Maya, this isn't the time or place. My aunt wired $144,000 for me over 4 years," I said. "I'd like to know where it is." "It's been invested," my father said. He had recovered some of his composure. He sat back slightly and crossed his arms, which is what he does when he's decided that the best defense is confidence. "You have to understand, Ellie, that we took a very active role in managing this for Maya's long-term benefit. We put those funds into assets, into property, into things that would appreciate, rather than sitting in a savings account earning nothing." "What property?" my aunt asked. Her voice had not changed in pitch or temperature once. "We put a significant portion into the lake house renovation," he said. "The lake house." I felt something cold move through me. The lake house was a property my parents had purchased 6 years ago in Lake Norman. My mother had been posting about renovating it for 3 years. New dock, kitchen gut, primary suite with a soaking tub. I had never been invited to stay there. Tyler filmed there regularly. He had an entire series called Lake Days that performed well in summer. "The lake house renovation," my aunt repeated. She looked at my mother. "And the rest?" My mother's composure cracked just slightly at the edges. There were other family expenses. Tyler's equipment, his camera setup, the studio light package. Brand building takes investment up front. What Tyler is building will benefit this whole family. "Tyler's camera equipment," I said. "His setup cost $40,000, my father said, with genuine pride, as if this number was impressive in the right direction. "Professional grade. He's building a real business." "I have a hole in my compression sock," I said. "I have been wearing it for 7 months because I couldn't justify $19. My mother waved her hand. "You're being dramatic." "I have student loan debt that I've been paying minimum on for 3 years because I can't afford more," I said. "I have been turning down social plans with my coworkers because I can't afford to split a dinner check. I've been telling people I'm a homebody. I'm not a homebody. I'm broke." "You chose nursing," my mother said, and there it was, the shrug that contained everything, the philosophy of it, the complete architecture of how they saw me. "You knew the salary going in. That's a lifestyle choice, Maya. Not everyone can be entrepreneurial." Tyler looked up from his phone for the first time. He had the expression of someone who has been listening the whole time and has decided that now is the moment to contribute. "I mean, she's right. I've been putting in serious work. The algorithm doesn't just—" "Tyler," I said. "Grandma's money paid for your ring light." He looked at me, then at his phone, then back at me. He didn't say anything else. I glanced at my phone. The viewer count was climbing. I didn't read the comments. I kept my eyes on my parents. My father leaned forward. His voice dropped. "Maya, put your phone away." His voice dropped. "Maya, put your phone away. We can sit down this week and go over the numbers. We can make this right. There's equity in the lake house. We can refinance and—" "I don't want to refinance," I said. "You don't know what you want right now," my mother said. "You're emotional. That's what you do. You get overwhelmed and you make impulsive decisions. That's why we held the money in the first place, to protect you from yourself." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I looked at the pearl earrings she was wearing, which she had gotten last spring and posted about with the caption, "Little treats." I looked at her hair, which she had started getting done at a salon downtown that cost $240 for a cut and color. I looked at her watch, a brand I recognized because I had Googled it once after she wore it to Thanksgiving, and it had come up at $1,100, certified pre-owned. I thought about the month 2 years ago when I had a parking ticket I couldn't pay, and my account went into the negative, and I called home and asked if I could borrow $200 for 2 weeks. And my mother had said she was sorry. Money was tight. Maybe try a payday advance. Money was tight. "I want to ask you something," I said. 3 years ago, November. I called you on a Tuesday night. Do you remember?" My mother's eyes shifted slightly. "You call a lot, Maya." "I called because I was covering a double shift and I had a patient crash and I didn't handle it well. And I sat in the break room and cried and I called you and you didn't pick up. I texted you. I said I was having a really hard time and I needed to talk. You texted back 4 hours later and you said, sorry, you were at dinner with the Hendersons. I didn't see it right away. The next morning, you posted a photo from the restaurant. You tagged it. The reservation was at 7:30. My text came in at 7:42. I paused. You saw it. The table was very quiet. My grandmother, who had not spoken since the conversation began, set her water glass down with a sound that was small but felt large. My father tried again. Maya, you have to understand the position we were in. When Ellie began sending that money, you were 24. You didn't have financial literacy. You were making emotional decisions. We made a judgment call about what was best for the family ecosystem. The family ecosystem, I said. Everything we did was for this family, my mother said. Her voice had gone from smooth to something with an edge in it now. Something impatient. The way people get when they've been indulged too long in an argument they believe they've already won. Tyler needed support. You were already working. You were already managing. You're capable, Maya. You're the capable one. You always have been. That's not an insult. That's a compliment. I stared at her. I had heard this before, in different words, across different years. You're the strong one. You're the responsible one. You're the responsible one. You don't need as much. You figure things out. I had absorbed it as identity. I had worn it like a fact about myself. I had not understood until that moment, sitting at that table, that it was not a description. It was a justification. It was the reason they had decided that taking from me was acceptable. Because I would survive it. Because the capable one doesn't require the same level of investment as the one with potential. I was their guaranteed return. My brother was their high-risk bet. So they had taken my safety net and put it on him. You didn't support me, I said. You harvested me. The room went completely still. My aunt spoke first. She had been quiet for several minutes. When she spoke, it was not to my parents. She looked at me. Maya, she said, I owe you an apology. I should have confirmed with you directly from the beginning. I trusted the wrong people with your future, and I am sorry. She reached under her chair. She had brought a bag. I had noticed it when she sat down and thought nothing of it. She lifted it onto the table, and from it she withdrew a manila folder that was thick enough that it bent slightly at the spine. She set it in the center of the table between the breadbasket and the candle. I am a retired tax attorney, she said pleasantly. I have spent 50 years reading money trails. When your grandmother told me last week that you still hadn't moved into your own place, I made some calls. I still know people. She opened the folder. I've had 6 days. 6 days is enough. My father's hand moved toward the folder. My aunt placed 2 fingers on top of it without looking at him. This is a wire transfer log, she said. 4 years, 48 transactions, each one showing the funds leaving my account and arriving in the account I was given. That account, it turns out, is not a personal savings account. It is an LLC. It's called Meridian Family Partners. It's registered in North Carolina. She slid one page out and pushed it toward the center of the table. Registered to you, Karen. She used my mother's name like a timestamp. My mother said nothing. Meridian Family Partners has made the following expenditures in 4 years. My aunt continued, pulling out another page. She didn't read from it dramatically. She read from it the way someone reads a grocery list. Renovation materials, Lake Norman property, $61,000. Camera, lighting, and audio equipment listed under Tyler's content creation, $38,000. Vehicle payment on a 2022 Lexus RX, $22,000. And various miscellaneous charges including clothing, restaurant bills, a golf membership, and, she paused here, just slightly, $2,000 to a Charlotte-based portrait photographer for what appears to be Karen's updated headshots. Tyler looked up again. He looked at my mother. For the first time, he looked uncertain. My father cleared his throat. Eleanor, these are investments that benefit the family. Maya is part of this family. The lake house is in whose name? My aunt asked. Silence. The lake house is titled to Meridian Family Partners, my aunt said, which is registered to Karen. Maya's name does not appear anywhere in the paperwork. It was always intended, my father started. Intentions don't title property, my aunt said. What does title property is what I have been doing for the last 6 days. She pulled out the last document in the folder. It was thicker than the others. She did not slide it across. She held it and spoke to me directly. When stolen funds are used to purchase property, there is a legal mechanism called a constructive trust. The court looks past the name on the deed and asks, whose money actually paid for this? In this case, the answer is your money, Maya. Funds designated for you by me, diverted without your knowledge or consent. She looked at my parents again. I filed for an emergency constructive trust order yesterday afternoon. I have colleagues who don't keep banker's hours. She set the document down in front of me. The lake house is yours. My mother made a sound. I don't have a word for it. It was not a scream, and it was not a gasp. It was the sound of someone realizing that the floor beneath them has been replaced with air. My father pushed back from the table. That is not legal. You cannot do that without notice, without due process. The order has been signed, my aunt said. You will receive official notification at your registered address within 48 hours. I would advise you to contact an attorney. This is insane, my mother said. Her voice had shed all of its warmth now. She was looking at me like I had done something to her, like I was the one sitting at her table taking things that weren't mine. Maya, you have to understand. We were going to pay that money back. We were always going to. I couldn't afford to go to my college roommate's wedding, I said. I told her I had a scheduling conflict. I didn't have a scheduling conflict. I couldn't buy a dress and a gift and a flight, and I didn't want to explain that, so I lied to her and I missed it, and she was one of my best friends. That was 2 years ago. She has a daughter now. I have never met her. I paused. You were at the lake house that weekend. You posted a sunset photo. My mother opened her mouth. She closed it. My father looked at my aunt. Eleanor, be reasonable. We can settle this privately. No courts, no orders. We'll liquidate. We'll make Maya whole. This doesn't need to. I'm going to stop you there, Richard, my aunt said, because I want to make sure I understand what you're offering. You're offering to return money you took without consent in exchange for no legal consequences. She tilted her head. That's not a settlement. That's a confession. She looked at my phone. She had noticed it earlier, I think. She was a tax attorney for 50 years. She noticed everything. How many people are watching? She asked me. I looked at the screen for the first time. The number had gone past 20,000. The comments were moving faster than I could read. I caught phrases. I caught fragments. I saw my mother is you. I saw make them pay. I saw I cannot stop crying this happened to me. 23,000, I said. My brother stood up. I didn't know, he said. He was looking at me and his voice was doing something strange. Maya, I didn't know where the money was from. They told me it was their savings. I swear, Tyler, my mother said sharply. I didn't know, he said again. He sat back down. He put his phone face down on the table. I don't know what that meant. I don't know what anything Tyler does means fully. But I noted it. My father tried one more time. He was a man watching his exits close off, one by one, and still trying to find a door. Let's be adults about this. The money has been in assets. We weren't hiding it. We were building something for the whole family. If Maya had asked, I asked you for $200, I said. 2 years ago, I needed it for 2 weeks. You said money was tight. The silence after that one had a different quality. My grandmother spoke for the first time since it had all begun. She is 75 years old, and she has been watching my family for all of those years, and I have never heard her voice sound the way it sounded when she said simply, Richard, Karen, I think you should go. My father stood. My mother stood. My father opened his mouth once more, and my grandmother looked at him with the full weight of 75 years of watching people make choices, and he closed it again. They left. Tyler sat at the table for another minute, looking at the empty centerpiece. Then he said he was going to go get some air. He walked out a different door than my parents. I sat with my grandmother and my aunt at the birthday table with the good china and the candles that were still burning. My aunt poured more wine. My grandmother took my hand across the table and held it without saying anything, and that was the thing that finally made me cry. Not the money. Not the list of expenditures. Not the constructive trust order with my name at the top of it. It was her hand, which is small and dry and has held my hand since I was 4 years old, and which has never once calculated my worth. There were 2 more things that happened that night. The first was that my father, in the driveway, called me. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. In the voicemail, he said that I had chosen public humiliation over family loyalty, and that if I pursued this legally, he would tell his attorney that I had fabricated the whole story for social media attention and that any settlement offer would be withdrawn immediately. He said this in the voicemail that exists on my phone. The voicemail I still have. 23,000 people had watched my mother itemize my suffering as a portfolio decision. My father's threat made 23,000 witnesses. He did not understand what he had done. The second was the lake house key. My aunt had a copy made. She handed it to me across the table with the same care you'd hand someone a bird that had been hurt and was just beginning to trust the air again. A property on Lake Norman, with a dock, with a kitchen that has marble counters my hands have never touched, with a soaking tub in the primary suite that I will fill with hot water and sit in on the first morning I wake up there. And I will not calculate anything. I will not calculate anything. I will not subtract one thing from another and see what remains. I will just be in the water. I will just breathe. People talk about family like it is the most permanent structure in your life. Like it is load-bearing, like the whole ceiling falls if you remove it. I am an architect's understanding of a nurse. I know that some things that look structural are actually ornamental. I know that some walls are holding the house up and some walls are just taking up space and making the room smaller. I have spent 4 years in a room that was smaller than it needed to be. Tonight, the wall came down. Not because I screamed, not because I flipped the table, not because I needed the validation of the people who had been stealing from me. I did not need their apology. I did not need their explanation. I needed the key. My name is Maya. I am 28 years old. I am a nurse, and I am good at my job, and starting Monday, I will be sleeping in my own house. The capable one turned out to be exactly that.